I turned the key, expecting silence. Instead, there was breath. A presence. Someone was already inside. At first, I thought maybe the door had creaked wrong. Maybe the shadows just shifted in that strange way they do when you've been out too late, and the hallway feels more like a memory than a place. But no, the air changed the second the lock gave in. It wasn't just stillness waiting for me. It was someone. I stepped inside slowly, my hand still on the key, afraid to pull it free as if that simple click would unleash something I couldn't undo. My apartment was dim, only the golden spill from a street lamp slanting through the blinds. It cast long lines across the hardwood floor, and her. She sat on my couch. No movement, just stillness with a pulse. Her knees drawn up, bare skin glowing faintly under the amber light. I couldn't see her face at first, just the curve of her shoulder, the slope of her neck, hair falling like a secret curtain. But even in that silence, I felt it. That unmistakable electricity of being watched. Or wanted. Or both. I didn't speak. I didn't move. I just stared. Not in fear, but in something far more dangerous. Curiosity wrapped in heat. Whoever she was, she didn't belong here. And yet she fit. Like this room had always been waiting for her shape to fill it. I could hear the ticking of the old kitchen clock, the hum of my refrigerator, the quickening of my own breath. "Hello?" I finally asked, though my voice didn't sound like mine. It was lower, slower, like something primal had slipped into it. She turned her head, and I saw her eyes, calm, steady, and impossibly dark, like she wasn't surprised to see me. Like I was the one who had interrupted her. "I didn't lock the door," she said softly. No apology, no excuse, just fact. And then she smiled. Slightly, barely, but enough. Something inside me tilted. A shift too sudden to name. I should have called someone. I should have panicked. But instead, I just stood there, watching her like I'd forgotten every rule I lived by. She slowly uncrossed her legs, not carelessly. No, it was deliberate. Like she knew I was watching every motion, like she wanted me to. My throat went dry, and all I could think was, this doesn't feel like danger. It felt like invitation. But invitation to what? I stepped closer, almost involuntarily. Her eyes followed mine. She hadn't blinked once. She was beautiful, not just in the way that steals your breath, but in the way that makes you forget you had any in the first place. "Do I know you?" I asked, even though I already knew the answer. She didn't speak. She just looked at me in that quiet, patient way that made my chest ache and my skin burn at the same time. Like she could see things I'd never told anyone. Like maybe she'd been here all along, waiting for this moment. Waiting for me. Then, finally, she moved, slowly rising from the couch, the soft rustle of fabric the only sound. And as she stepped toward me, barefoot on my floor, eyes locked to mine, her voice barely above a whisper. "You left the door open." My heart stopped, because I realized something. I had. Not just the door, but something far more dangerous. She said it so softly I barely caught it. "You left the door open." But the words weren't about locks or latches. They were about me. About something I hadn't realized I'd done. Not until she walked through the opening I'd left behind. She was standing just a few feet away now. No rush. No threat. Just heat. I didn't know her name. I didn't know what she wanted. But I didn't ask her to leave. Her eyes moved slowly over me. Not hungry, not obvious, just observant. As if I were something she already understood. And somehow, her gaze made me feel both entirely exposed and deeply seen. Like I was being read, not just watched. I swallowed hard. Every breath I took seemed louder. Every inch of space between us felt charged. "Why are you here?" I asked. But my voice didn't carry any weight behind it. It wasn't demand, it was surrender. She stepped closer. One step. I didn't move back. The floor creaked slightly under her weight. She was close enough now that I could see the detail in her eyes. Flecks of gold in all that dark, a quiet storm that didn't need to rage to be powerful. "I thought you wanted me to be," she said. That stopped something in me. Because the terrifying part wasn't that she was wrong. It was that she might be right. I hadn't realized how lonely I'd been. Not the kind of loneliness you talk about over drinks or text a friend in passing. This was deeper. The kind you can't quite name. The kind that makes you leave the door unlocked, literally or not. I should have said something sharp. Should have pushed her away with logic or fear. But instead, my hand dropped to my side, and I let the silence stretch between us. That's when she reached out. Her fingers didn't touch me. Not yet. They hovered. Barely a breath of space. But I could feel her. The heat of her hand, the static in the air. And when her hand finally met mine, it was nothing dramatic. Just fingers brushing. Like a question she already knew the answer to. I felt it ripple through me. That shiver that starts low and spreads everywhere, like something ancient waking up inside my skin. Her thumb dragged slowly over my palm. Just that. Just enough to make me close my eyes. I shouldn't be here, she whispered. But neither of us pulled away. My chest rose and felt like I'd just run a mile. But I hadn't moved. What do you want? I asked again, though this time, my voice was different. She leaned in just enough for her breath to find my collarbone. Warm. Deliberate. I want to know what happens, she said. If you don't stop me. I stood there, suspended between instinct and desire. My mind raced, listing all the reasons this was wrong, wild, maybe even dangerous. But my body wasn't listening. My skin ached for more. My breath had turned shallow. And somewhere beneath the thrum of my heartbeat, I knew. I wasn't going to stop her. Not yet. She stepped past me, trailing her fingers along my arm. Slow, like a secret being written. Her body brushed mine for half a second too long. And then she disappeared down the hallway into my bedroom. No words. No promises. Just a look over her shoulder. An invitation. I stood there frozen, one foot still inside the doorway, the other halfway into something I didn't understand, but craved like I'd been starving. And then I heard it. The faint rustle of fabric. A soft exhale. She was waiting. And I had to decide. Follow her, or close the door. But we both knew I wouldn't. I followed her. Not like someone chasing. More like someone drawn. The hallway felt longer than usual. Narrower. Like the air had thickened with every step. I didn't even realize I was holding my breath until I reached the doorframe and exhaled into the dark. She hadn't turned on the light. The only glow came from the city outside, filtering through the curtains. It laid silver shapes across the sheets, soft shadows curling along the walls. And in the middle of it all, she stood with her back to me. Barefoot. Silent. Waiting. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. My presence had already answered her question. She reached up and untied her hair, letting it fall freely down her back like a slow-motion storm. Then she turned, half-lit, half-shadowed, and leaned against the window ledge, like the city lights were hers alone to command. I used to imagine this, she said softly, eyes still on the street below. I watched her, my hands curled into fists at my sides, not from tension, but to keep them from reaching. Every nerve in me felt stretched, overheated. You imagine being in a stranger's bedroom? I asked, my voice dry, uneven. She looked at me then. No, she said. Yours. I blinked. But we've never. She smiled, tilted her head slightly. Haven't we? Something in me shifted. Not fear. Not confusion. Something older. A memory I didn't remember. A craving I couldn't name. She walked past me slowly. And as she did, her shoulder grazed mine. Just the faintest touch. But it burned. Like her body carried electricity, and mine had been wired for this moment long before I understood it. She moved to my nightstand and ran her finger along its edge, like she was tracing thoughts I hadn't yet dared to speak. Everything in here, she said, almost to herself, feels like it's held its breath too long. My heart pounded so loudly I wondered if she could hear it. You're not afraid, I said quietly. She turned to face me fully then, calm, centered, sure. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. And the terrifying part? So was I? I stepped closer, the floor beneath me groaning just enough to remind me I was real. That this was real. That this wasn't a dream, though it pulsed with that same surreal softness. She was standing by my bed now, one hand resting lightly on the headboard. There was no rush between us. No clumsy hunger. Just gravity. And that unbearable, exquisite space of not quite touching. Do you always let strangers in like this? She asked suddenly. I swallowed, throat thick. No. Then why me? I paused. Thought. Felt. I think. I started, my voice caught between truth and instinct. Because it never felt like you were a stranger. She closed the gap then. Slowly. Pressed her hand flat against my chest. Not to pull me closer. Just to feel my heartbeat. Her fingers splayed across me like she was learning a rhythm she already knew by heart. Neither of us spoke. Words would have ruined it. What we had was pressure. Breath. The kind of silence that says don't move, or it'll disappear. Then she said it. barely a whisper against my jaw. Let me stay just for tonight. And I nodded. Because what else do you do when a ghost you've never met steps into your life and asks to be real? She didn't climb into bed. She didn't undress. She didn't even take off her necklace. A small silver pendant that caught the light like a whisper I wasn't supposed to hear. Instead, she sat, right in the center of my bed, legs crossed beneath her, posture still and impossibly graceful, like she belonged in this space far more than I ever had. Sit, she said gently, looking up at me. I hesitated, not because I didn't want to, but because her voice carried weight. Like sitting beside her was a promise I hadn't realized I was about to make. I did as she asked, sinking onto the mattress. There was still space between us. Barely, but it felt monumental. Then she added, without looking at me, "Don't touch me." That caught me off guard. I turned toward her, but her eyes were far away, locked somewhere beyond the window, or deep inside her own head. "I want to see if I can feel you without touch," she said, almost like a confession. And just like that, the room changed. The urge to reach out was immediate, violent. Her shoulder was right there, inches away, her bare knee just visible beneath soft folds of fabric. I could feel her heat radiating toward me, subtle but inescapable. She wanted me to sit here, beside her, aching and still. A test, a game, a ritual. I closed my eyes, let the silence crawl over me. I listened to her breathing, the way it hitched slightly when my thighs shifted against the bed, the way she exhaled slower when I leaned forward ever so slightly, close enough for her to feel the ghost of me. There's something erotic in restraint, something brutal in proximity without permission. And right now, she was destroying me slowly. "I can feel your heartbeat," she said. I opened my eyes. Her gaze was on me now, steady and unnerving. "Can you feel mine?" I swallowed hard. "I think so." She smiled softly, not teasing, but knowing. "Good. Then don't move." The night outside deepened. Streetlights flickered and buzzed. Inside, we sat in silence, so loaded it felt like a scream. My hands were in my lap, useless. My entire body was vibrating with a kind of unbearable patience. All I wanted was to touch her. Just her hand. Just her arm. Just a single fingertip. But I didn't, because she hadn't asked for that. And somehow, that made everything worse. Or better. "I like control," she said suddenly. I nodded, unable to answer. "But it's not about power." "Not really." I looked at her. Her voice was soft, but there was iron underneath it. "It's about being seen," she continued. "About someone staying, even when they're not allowed to take." I felt something in my chest collapse inward. Recognition, maybe. "Are you testing me?" I asked. She tilted her head. Would it matter if I was? I couldn't answer that either. We sat like that, breathing in sync, hearts thudding in an invisible rhythm, for what felt like hours. And something strange happened. The wanting didn't fade. It amplified. It wasn't even about touch anymore. It was about being allowed. And when she finally leaned closer, her mouth brushing just barely near my ear, her breath hot and devastating, she whispered, "You're still here." I nodded. And then she said something I didn't expect. "Good. Because I want to try something else now." And I was, barely breathing, sitting on the edge of my own bed like it didn't belong to me anymore. Then she leaned back just enough to see my eyes, the darkness folding around her like a curtain. Her voice was steady, but low, like what she was about to ask would cost her something too. "Tell me something you've never said out loud." I blinked. That wasn't what I expected. No command to kiss her. No invitation to close the gap. Just truth. I hesitated. Not because I didn't have something to say, but because I didn't know which truth to choose. The small one? The harmless one? Or the one I buried so deep I sometimes forgot it was still alive in me? "Why?" I asked quietly. She looked down at her hands in her lap, then back up, and in that moment, I saw it. Something fragile flickering behind her calm. Like this wasn't just a game anymore. Like this was her version of undressing. "Because I'm already inside your house," she said. "But I want to know what's inside you." There was no smirk, no seduction in her tone, only need. And I realized, she wasn't doing this to play with me. She was doing this to know me. And for the first time, I wasn't sure I was ready for that. But I answered, "I don't know if I've ever been truly wanted," I said. The words came slower than I expected, like pushing them through thick fog. "People like what I give, what I can do. But me? Just me?" I let out a short breath. I've never believed anyone really wanted that. She didn't speak. She didn't flinch. She just listened. And then, so quietly I almost missed it, she said, "I do." Those two words nearly unmade me. I turned to her, stunned, not by what she said, but by how easily she said it. Like it wasn't something wild or impossible. Like it was just true. She shifted closer. Not touching, but near enough now that her breath warmed my cheek. "And now it's your turn," I said. She froze. And for the first time since she walked into my life, I saw her hesitate. "I used to sneak into houses when I was younger," she said finally, her voice low and careful. "Not to steal, just to feel things. Other people's quiet. Other people's air." I stayed still, listening. I would walk into rooms and imagine lives that weren't mine. Sometimes I'd cry for people I didn't even know. I didn't understand it then, but now I think. She paused. "I think I was trying to find the place where I belonged, even if I had to borrow it for a night." She looked up at me again, her eyes shining but dry. "That's why I'm here." Silence fell again, not awkward, not cold. It was heavy, sacred, like the space after a confession in a dark church. Then I whispered, almost to myself, "You found it." Her eyes closed for a beat, and when they opened, something in her had shifted. Like she'd given something away, and now she was waiting to see if I would guard it or destroy it. I didn't move, didn't reach for her, but I said one thing. "You can stay." She didn't respond. She just exhaled, deep, surrendered. And for the first time that night, she leaned into me, resting her head against my shoulder, slow and trembling. Not for desire, but for safety. She was warm against my shoulder. Still, like a decision had been made, one she hadn't said aloud, but that lived in the weight of her body leaning into mine. I didn't move. I couldn't. I was too aware of everything. The way her breath feathered across the curve of my neck, the faint scent of something citrus in her hair, the gentle rise and fall of her chest, steady at first, then quicker, like my stillness was doing something to her too. Her hand wasn't on me, but I felt her everywhere. "You're quiet," she said softly, still not lifting her head. "I don't want to break this," I answered. She let out a breath that wasn't quite a laugh. "There's nothing fragile here." I wasn't so sure, because something was breaking, or shifting, or unfolding, inside me. A pressure I'd held for years. The way I'd learned to pull back just before things got real. Or vulnerable. Or messy. But this wasn't a game or a fantasy. It felt like I was sitting inside someone's secret, and they'd just let me in. I turned slightly, and she lifted her head. Her eyes met mine, and this time, there was no mystery. Just heat. Real, unhidden, and terrifying in its clarity. She was looking at me like she wanted something. But not my hands. Not my mouth. Me. And I didn't know if I was ready for that. "I'm not here to be touched," she said. "I'm here to be felt." It hit me in the chest. That sentence. It rewired the entire room. I'd never heard anyone say it like that before, and I knew, without question, that she meant every word. "I don't want a moment," she continued. "I want to be remembered. I want to be the breath you miss when the room is quiet. The space your hands twitch for at night." Her voice was almost shaking now, but her gaze was locked. "I want to be the story that lives in you long after I leave." And then came the part one didn't expect. "But I can't stay." I blinked. "What?" She looked away, suddenly. Her jaw clenched slightly, and her breath caught. "I wasn't supposed to come here," she said. "But I did. And now I want more than I can take." I felt my chest tighten. "You're leaving?" She nodded, eyes still down. "But not yet," she added. "Not tonight." There was a pause. Then she looked up again, and the way she looked at me, it wasn't desperation. It was permission. "Will you lie beside me?" she asked. "Not with me. Not touch me. Just be there." I nodded. I climbed slowly onto the bed beside her, careful not to brush too close. We lay on our backs, side by side, like two magnets turned just slightly away from alignment. The energy between us palpable, unspent. Minutes passed. Maybe hours. The room darkened. The air got cooler. But we stayed exactly as we were. Eyes open. Breath synced. And then, just when I thought the night would settle into quiet, she whispered, without turning, "If I ask you something selfish, will you say yes?" Her voice barely moved the air, but it shattered something inside me. I turned my head slowly toward her. She was still staring at the ceiling, arms tucked beneath her, her profile painted in moonlight, but her mouth was trembling. "What is it?" I asked, though I already knew it wouldn't be simple. She was silent for a moment, like the question itself was too heavy to carry all at once. And then, just for tonight, I want you to pretend I'm yours. The words dropped between us like something sacred. Not seductive, not suggestive, but aching. She wasn't asking for passion. She was asking for belonging. Yours, she repeated. Not to keep, not to claim. Just like we've always had this. Like I never had to knock, or explain, or wait. I stared at the ceiling too, afraid that if I looked at her, I wouldn't be able to handle what I saw in her face. Can you do that? She whispered. Just for tonight? I didn't answer at first. My chest felt too tight. Because the truth was, she already felt like mine. And I hated how easy it was to believe her. To want her. Not her body. Not her beauty. Her presence. The way she filled the room without trying. The way silence became language when she breathed beside me. I finally whispered, yes. And her whole body shifted, just slightly, like something inside her had unclenched. She turned onto her side then, slowly, carefully. And I did too. We faced each other in the dark, so close now I could feel her breath on my cheek again. Her fingers hovered near my chest like before, but this time, she placed them there. Not possessively, not to tease, just to anchor herself. And in that soft, still moment, she whispered, hold me like you never have to let go. So I did. I pulled her into me, gently, fully, and she folded into the space like she'd always belonged there. Her hand rested over my heart. My arm wrapped around her waist. No movement, no escalation, just presence. Her forehead pressed to my throat. Her legs tangled loosely with mine. I could feel the heat of her skin through the thin fabric between us, but it wasn't lust that consumed me. It was grief. For the things we never got to say. For the lies we were pretending to share, if only for this one night. Time passed like honey. Slow. Golden. Infinite. She whispered small things. Soft words. Half thoughts. Confessions too quiet to repeat. And I held her tighter, as if I could take them into me and carry them for her. Do you feel it? She asked once, breath warm against my collarbone. I nodded. Me too, she said. It's terrifying. And I whispered, don't go yet. To which she replied, after a long silence, I won't, but you have to let me disappear in the morning. And that's when I knew. This was never meant to last. But it was meant to happen. I woke to the sound of birds. Soft, distant. The kind you only hear in the earliest hours, before traffic, before alarms, before real life starts pressing itself against the windows. The bed beside me was warm, but empty. No sound of movement. No whispered goodbye. Just gone. At first, I stayed still, eyes half open, trying to convince myself she was just in the kitchen, or the shower, or curled up on the couch, watching light drip through the blinds like she had all night. But I knew. I reached over. The sheets still held her shape. Her scent lingered faintly on the pillow, citrus and skin, like a promise folded into linen. And beside it, something waited. A note. Small. Folded twice. No name on the front. My fingers hesitated as I picked it up, like it might burn. Like the act of unfolding, it would make it real. Inside, her handwriting. Sharp, feminine, almost too honest. Thank you for letting me belong. For not needing to understand. You didn't save me, and that's why it meant everything. P.S. You'll forget my face before you forget how I made you feel. That's how you'll know it was real. Asterisk, asterisk. I read it twice. 3 times. Then let it fall beside me on the bed. I didn't cry. It wasn't that kind of heartbreak. It was deeper. The kind that makes you quiet. The kind that teaches you something you didn't know you needed to learn. She hadn't taken anything with her. Not her earrings. Not her perfume. Not even the book she'd noticed on my nightstand and whispered, I've always wanted to read that. But somehow, she'd taken part of the room with her. The air felt thinner. The light colder. Like everything in here remembered her and missed her already. I stood in the hallway for a long time, hand on the doorknob, staring at the lock I forgot to use. But now, I understood why. Sometimes we don't want to be safe. Sometimes we want to be found. Even if it's only once. Even if it's only for a night. Because once someone sees the part of you you thought was invisible, you never quite go back to who you were before. So yes, she left. But she never really left. She became the silence I listened for. The pause before I sleep. The breath I take when no one's watching. And sometimes, when I sit alone in the dark, I still feel her beside me. Not a ghost. Not a memory. Just the shape of something that mattered. Even if it only knocked once.